Welcome to the 7th episode of Red's Room Podcast. I'm your host, Red.
And I am Jake.
And today we are talking about Atlantis. As always, our references are in the episode description, so feel free to cross-reference those and make sure that we are not lying.
Yeah, do what you got to do with them, man. Whatever Wikipedia rabbit hole you get put into, it is not on me.
Yeah, we do not make this stuff up. Anyways, let's get into Atlantis. So, Atlantis is likely a mythical island nation that's mentioned in Plato's dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. It's been an object of fascination among Western philosophers, historians, and our group, conspiracy theorists, for nearly 2,400 years, ever since Plato wrote it. He describes it as a powerful and advanced kingdom that sank in a day and a night into the ocean around 9,600 BC. That is dating far back before we ever thought there was an advanced civilization, according to history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, way back. What is it, over 10,000 years?
Yeah, I mean, modern history dates the first civilization as the Sumerians, I think, a little over 4,000 years ago.
Okay.
I'm going off memory, but so this is like more than double that.
Yeah.
It's a super advanced civilization. So Plato, through the character Critias in his dialogues, describes Atlantis as an island larger than Libya and Asia Minor put together. Located in the Atlantic, just beyond the Pillars of Hercules. We don't know exactly what that is, but we think the Pillars of Hercules refer to the Strait of Gibraltar. Its culture was advanced, and it had a constitution that, here's a kind of a red flag. The constitution is very similar to the one that Plato outlines in his dialogue, The Republic.
Yeah, and I guess, like we were kind of talking about earlier, there's two ways to take that. Either one, Plato kind of tailored this to his own views, or he tailored his views to what he found in the story of Atlantis. So you could definitely take it either way.
Either way. Some have used it as evidence to argue against it, but yeah, maybe like you said, maybe he got the idea from the story.
Yeah,
I think
both are just as plausible as the other.
Yeah. So this Atlantis, according to Plato, it was protected by the god Poseidon, who made his son Atlas king and namesake of the island and the ocean that surrounded it. And that's why it's called the Atlantic Ocean. It comes from this story from Plato. It comes from Atlantis, which is just cool, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So, as the Atlanteans grew powerful, their ethics slowly declined. And then their armies eventually conquered Africa and as far as Egypt and Europe. And as far as Tyrrhenia, sorry if I'm butchering that, before eventually being driven back by an Athenian-led allegiance. So, in his story, as their ethics decline, they start deciding they're going to conquer other people. They're tied together. Like the bloodlust and their morals going down. Later, by way of divine punishment, the island is then beset by earthquakes and floods, and then it sinks into a muddy sea. In the way he describes it, it's like it's shallow. Like it's not like deep down into the ocean like you might have heard, but it's just like barely under the water.
Yeah, and I guess in some way, as far as Plato says, is that the reason why we don't see the city anymore, obviously, is that it was kind of hit by a cataclysmic event where I guess everything was destroyed.
Yeah. So And Plato's Critias says that he heard the story of Atlantis from his grandfather, who had heard it from the Athenian statesman Solon. That's 300 years before Plato lived. And who had learned it from an Egyptian priest who said it happened 9,000 years before that. So that's our timeline. And this is the sole source.
Yeah.
There is no older references to Atlantis than this.
And this is where, we're not saying we're preaching facts here. This is obviously just an amazing story. And just hearing, kind of, I guess, all that Plato knew that the story was passed down from, that's already a lot of people it's been passed down from. And that's thousands of years before it, quote unquote, happened. So who knows how many times this has been passed down. Nothing, no way to say how old this is, how many people it's been through. It's a kind of ancient tale.
Yeah. Or he made it up.
Yeah. Yes.
We're not arguing either way.
Yeah, we can't.
We're just given all the facts.
Or his uncle or whatever,
his
he made
grandfather.
It up. Yeah, his grandfather. He made it up. So who
says
knows?
He heard it from an Egyptian priest.
Yeah.
Which is either totally true or was the first time that this charlatan ruse was used.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of ifs. We'll get into a bunch of stuff later, but...
Yeah, and who knows? Any day, maybe they can uncover something in Egypt that has this story.
Yeah, some Dead Sea Scrolls type shit.
Yeah, the Egyptians had some story about sea peoples who attacked them.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's related, but it's just interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, who knows? So, let's move on. Let's talk about some ancient writers that they viewed Atlantis, what they thought about it, as they were either fictional or a metaphorical myth.
Yeah.
Some believed that it was totally real. Aristotle believed that Plato, his teacher, I feel like that's backwards. Aristotle was Plato's teacher, had invented the island to teach philosophy. The philosopher Cranto, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Cranto, a student of Plato's student Xenocrates, is cited often as an example of a writer who thought the story to be historical fact. His work, A Commentary on Timaeus, is lost, but Proclus, a Neoplatonist of the 5th century A.D., reports on it. The passage that we're talking about has been represented in modern literature either as claiming that Crantor visited Egypt, had conversations with priests, and saw hieroglyphics confirming the story, or claiming that he learned about them from other visitors to Egypt. Proclus wrote, so I'm going to quote here, this is what he wrote. As for the whole of this account of the Atlanteans, some say that is unadorned history, such as Crantor, the first commenter on Plato. Crantor also says that Plato's contemporaries used to criticize him jokingly for not being the inventor of his republic, but copying the institutions of the Egyptians. Plato took these critics seriously enough to assign to the Egyptians this story about the Athenians and Atlanteans, so as to make them say that the Athenians really once lived according to that system. The next sentence is often translated, Crantor adds that this is testified by the prophets of the Egyptians, who assert that these particulars, which are narrated by Plato, are written on pillars which are still preserved. But in the original, the sentence starts with not with the name Crantor, but with the ambiguous he. So this could refer to Crantor or to Plato. which either way, it totally changes the interpretation of that last part of whether or not this is written on pillars in Egypt. So is Crantor, if it's Crantor, is he saying that it's written in pillars that Plato was lying? Or if Plato is saying that, is he saying that it's written on these pillars in Egypt that he is telling the truth?
Kind of, I feel like we're kind of in a he said, she said situation.
That was like a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
Getting to that.
It was.
That was the sum of it.
Yeah. There's like definitely like an easily two sides to this.
Yeah.
And even more interpretations.
Yeah. So they've been arguing about this forever, is what we're saying, ever since Plato talked about it.
It's a big hot topic of conversation.
Yeah, and like we said, like if the Egyptians have some knowledge of this, or if there's something on a pillar there, like,
by the way,
who knows?
I guess I'll put a little, just my thoughts. Like, the Egyptians gotta have something, dude.
I mean,
dude, they have to.
I wonder, like, if they have like, they've got to have some secret stuff, right? Like in their museums,
like. If Atlantis is real, like there's something about Atlantis in there somewhere.
Yeah, I feel like if it's not literally Atlantis, that there is some reference to some older civilization.
I mean,
but that's my personal thoughts.
I think we'll get there later too, but
I'm not trying to
the whole
paint
idea of an older civilization makes so much sense. And Atlantis is just one really freaking cool like example, obviously.
Yeah, I think that's why it resonates with people.
Yeah, it's just super freaking cool. But I guess we'll kind of get back on track here.
Yeah, we're actually, our next part, we're going to talk about it like resonating with people. So it's continual re-emergence. So in 1627, the English philosopher and scientist Francis Bacon, he published a utopian novel titled The New Atlantis, depicting, like Plato before him, a politically and scientifically advanced society on a previously unknown oceanic island. In 1882, former U.S. Congressman Ignatius L. Donnelly published Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, which touched off a frenzy of works attempting to locate and learn from a historical Atlantis. Donnelly hypothesized an advanced civilization whose immigrants had populated much of ancient Europe, Africa, and the Americas, and whose heroes had inspired Greek, Hindu, and Scandinavian mythology. Donnelly's theories were popularized and elaborated by the turn of the 20th century theosophists and are often incorporated into contemporary New Age beliefs. So there's just a couple.
Now we're getting a little crazier with the, like, religion stuff, you know?
Yeah, they're, like, adding on to it, and they're expanding, and they're making their own theologies about it.
Yeah. No, it's, like, that's getting super weird.
Here's some more. In 1882, publication of Atlantis, the Antediluvian World by Ignatius L. Donnelly stimulated much popular interest in Atlantis. He was greatly inspired by earlier works in Mayanism, and like them, attempted to establish that all known ancient civilizations were descended from Atlantis, which he saw as a technologically sophisticated, more advanced culture. Donnelly drew parallels between creation stories in the Old and New Worlds, attributing the connections to Atlantis, where he believed the biblical Garden of Eden existed. As implied by the title of his book, he also believed that Atlantis was destroyed by the Great Flood mentioned in the Bible. So he took that deep.
That was a fascinating connection right there. I would have never thought that anyone would come to a conclusion like that, but I guess he has his reasons.
Yeah, and I wish I dove into it more, but there was a huge thing with like totally misinterpreting like ancient Mayan and Aztec and Incan cultures and like mixing them all together and screwing it up like the Spanish did. Like he did a similar thing, and then in what they called Mayanism, and then like they mashed like all those cultures together and made them into what they thought like maybe Atlantis was, and thinking that Atlantis was in the Americas, and it was just totally misconstrued.
Sounds like a lot going on.
Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah. Even that connection, though, with the Great Flood, that's freaking wild. Imagine, Red,
Yeah.
if that, just hypothetically, if that's what actually happened.
That
would, obviously, I don't think so. I don't think so either, but I just hypothetically, that is insane.
Yeah, I think, if anything, like if I give him the benefit of the doubt, in 1882, I'm going to say this guy was just working with what he had.
Dude, imagine like a Michael Bay style movie, like Atlantis gets destroyed by the Great Flood.
Man,
they need to make that.
No, I'm not about it. No.
You're not buying that
no,
ticket?
I'm not about that one.
Too much? All right.
No, if anything, I'm about like the flood story being actually like the Younger Dryas period and like a meteor hitting the earth. Like I could see that one. I can see.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, this one, I think this is just some dude in the late 1800s that, he just doesn't have the resources to know that he's totally wrong.
Yeah, no, definitely the internet's long away from that period. Even,
right.
I'm assuming a lot of people didn't even speak English back then, but.
I know.
Anyway.
All right, let's get into what's becoming my favorite part of this. For some reason, so many things are tying into theosophy. So Atlantis is no exception. They love it. So let's talk about the connection here. So Madame Blavatsky, the founder of theosophy, took up Donnelly's interpretations. That's who we just read about, who connected to the Great Flood. Donnelly, and she wrote what's called The Secret Doctrine in 1888. What she claimed was originally dictated in Atlantis. She maintained that the Atlanteans were cultural heroes. This is contrary to Plato, who describes them mainly as a military threat. If you remember, he talked about them morally declining, right?
Yeah.
So she's talking about them differently. She believed in a form of racial evolution. This is opposed to primate evolution, like in Darwinism. And in her process of evolution, the Atlanteans were the fourth root race, which were succeeded by the fifth race, which was the Aryan race, which she identified with the modern human race. This is where the idea of Aryans come from. They come from Madame Blavatsky, the founder of theosophy, which I want to clarify. There was no racist there was no racist ideas tied to it at this point. That comes later.
Yes.
That comes with what we're going to talk about next.
Maybe one of my favorites right here.
So, in the view of Helena Blavatsky, in her doctrine, Atlantis correlated with the mythic Buddhist lands of Shambhala, ostensibly located near Tibet, where the successors of the third root race of the so-called Lemurians resided. I don't know where that came from, if she made it up, but I think maybe she did.
It's there nonetheless.
Yes, and she tied a lot of her theosophy religion to Tibet because she claimed to have learned things from monks there, but there's no proof that she ever went there. So I'm not saying she didn't, but
yeah,
I don't know. So let's go on. After Atlantis' destruction through a global flood, this is according to her, a few survivors supposedly migrated to the highlands of the Himalayas, where they founded the secret society of Agartha. The later Nazi Tibet expedition had its roots in these views, derived from Blavatsky, who emphasized the importance of Tibetan wisdom as well as the evolutionary superiority of races from Western China and Northeast India. Later, Austro-German interpreters of Blavatsky viewed Atlantis as the North Atlantic island civilization of Thule, the capital of a pro-Aryan civilization called Hyperborea, whose Nordic remnants might be found in today's Helgoland or Iceland. So there's a lot to unpack in that. So basically what happened is Blavatsky wrote her book, the Nazis heard of it and were like, hey, this root race sounds like, of Aryans, sounds like what we are interested in. We want to find this root race because it's obviously totally in line with our ideology. So they bought into what she said, and then they decided to go to Tibet and find this Aryan race roots, which they didn't find.
I could kind of see it because the Nazis were into a lot of weird shit.
Yeah, like, they were deep in the occult.
They were deep. I think a lot of people forget, too, especially in World War II, how much the Nazis bounced around in Europe and even Africa. And
all in search of occult things.
Yeah, I could see them trying to dig up just weird shit in general. And this is just... Yeah. I mean, we did Operation Paperclip
in before, a weird way, like, kind of grateful that they did that legwork.
Yeah.
Like, I guess they dug into these weird things, and then
one
they
of
found
the few good things they did.
Yeah, they found a lot of them being bullshit. I'm sure this was one of them. But yeah, also like the mention in here of Thule. So, like, the island civilization of Thule, like, that's, like, another mythological place. I want to say it showed up, like, on a map or on, like, a few old maps, and then it's, like, it's never existed either. So, it's kind of like in Atlantis as well.
Yeah. I guess they...
I don't know if there's enough there for us to cover that in an episode at some point, but it is another totally just random place.
Mythologic just has that aura around it, like... This is cool, but probably bullshit.
Yeah, it's like if anything shows up on an old map and then doesn't show up later, like everyone's just... Not everyone, but like conspiracy theorists just go wild with it. So
how many different movie plots has that been?
Right, and I'm not saying anything against that because maybe there could be something to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's go a little more with the Theosophists. So we talked about its founder. Now let's talk about someone who we mentioned before. In our episode on the Emerald Tablet, we talked about Maurice Doreal, who claimed to have discovered the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, and that Thoth was a king of Atlantis. In around 1930, he formed the Brotherhood of the White Temple in Denver. Having been involved in theosophy, he claimed that in 1931 in Los Angeles, he met two Atlanteans who took him to a cave underneath Mount Shasta. Doreal quickly developed a cosmology focused on the inner earth, describing underground races he claimed to have learned from the Atlanteans. Doreal developed theories of an underground serpent race. During the 1950s, he incorporated aliens into his views. He combined these all into a theory that in the second half of the 20th century, the serpent race would ally with the Antichrist. He believed that there were three types of flying saucers, including one piloted by the serpent people who were once icebound in Siberia, became defrosted, and then replaced and overthrew the communist regime in Russia. What do you think of that, Jake?
I mean, it's pretty sweet. Like this guy Maurice, like I'm assuming he's been dead for a long time, but he just needs, if anyone could write like a biography about his life and like
Yeah.
what I guess lack thereof, like medication he was on, like this dude was, I wonder what sparked his, I don't know, do you think he was like born with like just this kind of mind, or do you think he like fucked his head up? Do you think he had a head injury?
I
Like
think maybe he read one too many sci-fi novels and then somehow saw the opportunity to make a cult
yeah,
and did.
which he does. Yeah, we talked about that in the Emerald Tablet episode.
You know, I mean, I don't know though. Like, I always got to throw that doubt in what I say.
Like this
but
guy,
I would say I'm 99% sure that this guy's full of shit.
I totally agree with that, but I just want to know like what got this guy like. This takes like a certain kind of confidence, just to like. I don't even know how you
Or
can make
delusion.
Yeah, well, good point, but that's still like the pair of balls this dude had on him. They were huge, bro.
Because, like, okay, if in real life I was in Mount Shasta, which is where these guys, so these guys, like, they picked Mount Shasta because, like, it was, like, sacred to the Native Americans, you know? So they're, like, tagging on to that ideology. So just say I'm at Mount Shasta and two Atlanteans did show up and showed me some crazy shit without a doubt. Like, I knew they were Atlanteans. Then they, like, I don't know that I would tell anyone because
I don't think I'd tell anyone.
like, yeah, like what sane person would go around like just telling everyone that?
You would have to have some form of proof that was like
Yeah, with no form of
totally
proof, right?
Yeah, you'd have to have like something, like you would have to produce like a product. Like I don't even
Yeah,
honestly.
I don't know.
What's his
and
name?
then
Maurice.
Maurice, and then he preached. He basically ended up, you know, making a doomsday cult. Is what he did. He turned his temple into a doomsday cult, worried that in the 20th century, the serpent race and the Antichrist, and there was going to be this crazy shit, and they built like bunkers. And
I'm getting like Heaven's Gate vibes, bro.
yeah, like kind of they built bunker and
Yeah.
or bunkers in Colorado, like trying to like, you know, prepare for the doomsday. So like, yeah, it basically became a doomsday cult. So
I guess to end this tangent,
to me, if anything didn't disprove it, that did.
to end this tangent and to continue on a little longer to get away from this, like I would like a bunker. Like having
on
a
a side
bunker
note, yeah.
would be dope. But anyway.
Okay, let's get to our next Theosophist. Another one we mentioned in the episode on the Emerald Tablets. His name was Guy Ballard. And in the 30s, Ballard claimed to have met the mythical Saint Germain while hiking, guess where? Mount Shasta again. He claims Saint Germain was one of a group of ascended masters who taught him the secrets of enlightenment, and even that the destruction of Atlantis was foretold by the ascended masters. Ballard also claims that Saint Germain took him to relive past lives as a citizen of Atlantis.
Dude, doesn't that sound like a Skyrim campaign or something?
Man, it sounds to me like the people in Theosophy were just like tripping all the time. And
yeah,
it was just a great time. But
they're pretty cool. I mean, they are cool thoughts, though.
I am very interested in their thoughts,
especially with
sure.
that last like line of text there: relive past lives as citizens of Atlantis.
Yeah, he's got some in-depth stories in that too. If you ever want to like look them up and read those stories.
Yeah.
So, let's get to our next guy. This is the last guy I have to talk about. Edgar Cayce. He's a clairvoyant, and he spoke frequently of Atlantis during his life readings. He claimed that many of his subjects were reincarnations of people who had lived in Atlantis. By tapping into their collective consciousness, which he referred to as the Akashic records. And that was a term he borrowed from theosophy, which that points to that he was aware or involved in theosophy. So he declares that he was able to give detailed descriptions of the lost continent of Atlantis. He also asserted that Atlantis would rise again in the 1960s. This sparked much popularity of the myth in that decade, and that there is a hall of records beneath the Egyptian Sphinx which holds the historical texts of Atlantis.
Yeah, one side note before you keep going, where people were sketched in the 1960s of maybe if they spark. You remember the 2012?
Yeah,
And there
yeah.
was like some people like sketched out that the day was coming.
Yeah, I probably a mini version of that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that he talks about a hall of records beneath the Sphinx. So it sounds to me like they borrowed that from the Hermetic text.
Exactly. That's what it totally... Dude, the Sphinx...
Which Theosophists were very aware of the Hermetic text.
Dude,
so they totally just stole the idea.
The Sphinx is just dope. Like,
it is dope.
Yeah.
All right. So Case, so his readings described the powerful crystal, the flying machine that could soar through the air, underwater, and out into space. The energy generators that harness the sun's rays and channel them into building a magnificent country of luxury, wealth, and peace. Case discourses describe how the Atlanteans rejuvenated their bodies regularly, allowing them to live hundreds of years longer than we do today. But he also tells of how this great culture fell from grace and power, destroying itself and its continent in the process. Case says that many ancient Atlanteans are reincarnating in the world today, bringing with them both the good and evil of that ancient land.
That's a bar.
The end of this sounds like Scientology to me.
Yeah, dude, like, I just get into, like, weird stuff like this, but the thing that stuck out to me is the whole rejuvenating their bodies so that they live longer.
Yeah.
The only thing I can imagine is, like, Boba Fett getting into the bacta tank to, like, you know what I mean? Rejuvenate,
Yeah.
like...
To me, they're just mixing, like, sci-fi ideas with older, like, ancient, like, Hermetic ideas and Plato and making their own... They're just making shit up,
this
man.
is where, like, I mean, obviously, I don't know what's real or not, but I guess I would identify more with Plato's idea of it, or the idea that it's more fictional or whatever, but I think Plato's idea makes the most sense. But I mean, these past few, I mean, they have cool ideas.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I think Plato's story was...
It's like the start.
I don't feel like he totally made it up. Like, he probably based it off of a real story, which maybe wasn't Atlantis, or maybe it was just a story of some other civilization.
Some ancient civilization.
Yeah, I feel like that is the most likely.
Yeah, like I've said before, like, any interpretation you have is just as valid as pretty much any other. Like, it's the lost city of Atlantis.
Yeah,
who knows?
It's up in the air. Like, no one knows unless they actually find it, which would be awesome.
I guess I more identify with Plato's view, but other views are cool. And, you know, the other, like, I guess the total counter-argument view that it's complete bullshit, like, I kind of subscribe to that too. Like, I'm kind of 50-50.
We're totally open here.
Yeah.
But well, some guys think they found it. So, Jake, tell us about that.
I was just going to get into that. I guess there's a few different theories on where it possibly could have been located, but if you could, do me a favor, go on Google Maps or look up an image of Rishat. Richat. It's located in northwest Africa, in the Sahara, in that area. And it's a deeply eroded concave dome, so it's basically an inverse dome. It's almost, you kind of get like crater vibes from it, but it's eerily similar to like a lot of interpretations of Atlantis, with the 3 rings of water, two rings of land, and another like point. And this is just, I believe a gentleman on Joe Rogan went about and talked about it. It's just eerily similar. So there is rings in this area of Rishat, and the lower rings where there would be water, it's weird that there's salt pockets. There's a bunch of salt deposits in the lowest elevation places where you would assume water would be.
That's how
Yeah.
Plato described it, as like rings, right?
Yeah.
Like there was an island in the middle, then like a ring of water,
Yeah.
then like a ring of land, then like a ring of water,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's kind of what it looks like,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And another thing that's weird too about this location is, I mean, I don't believe we got into this, but Plato speaks of an area where water could flow into from the south, and I'm assuming that would be your exit to the ocean or whatever great sea you were sailing from. But in Rashat, there's an exact opening towards the south that's low elevation once again that would look like water would flow into it. So that's just another like kind of connector there. So far we have this area in Africa. It's got the rings. It's got the salt in the bottom of the water to kind of show that water used to flow through there. And another thing to put on it, it's not small either. It's about 30 degrees in diameter. So this is like a big area. Like, I guess it does have the land to like sustain a city. But another thing to point onto this, like, you know, why would there be a great city in the desert? I guess we have that with Egypt and other places, but as we kind of know, like that deserty part of the Sahara used to be green.
Right. It didn't used to look like
Yeah,
that.
it used to be
Hence,
green.
you're talking about in the lower part of the rings there was salt. Like it used to be full of water.
There used to be a bunch of greenland, and
Yeah, and it dried up and left the salt there.
Those rings of water used to be filled, and that sort of delta towards the south used to be filled with water, and it would flow out towards the ocean, and you would have a great path of travel to where anyone from whatever neighboring country or continent would be able to drive in or boat in, come in through the south, and you have those rings to sail around, dock up your boat, and
yeah, it fits the bill.
yeah, it fits the bill. It's just it's a cool little.
I think the only deviation reading about that was that it's much bigger than the dimensions Plato gave. But he heard the story secondhand from somebody else who heard it. Yeah. So maybe the dimensions were off, right?
This is just also a cool connection.
Yeah, it's very plausible.
Yeah, I want to say the diameter, it's like between 25 and 30. It's like 27 miles across or something like that. So
it'd be awesome if someone can get in there and do like some actual archaeologists get in there and look at it.
I believe there hasn't. From Google Maps, you can see like the striations in parts of the sand and the rock where it looks like water used to flow through, and
it fits the bill. I mean, the thing is, it's just terrible. It's in like a war-torn area, so
yeah. And also there is many. This is just the one that made the most sense to me, so this is why I brought this one up. But there is other theories about where Atlantis was located.
Oh yeah.
So this is just one, but this is just the one that made the most sense to me. And I thought the thing that did it for me was the salt deposits.
Yeah. One other one is the Bimini Road. You might have heard of that one. In the Bahamas, I want to say in the Bahamas, there's underneath the waters, there's evidence of what looks like an ancient road that's sunken. And some archaeologists, they say that it's totally natural, but when you look at it, I mean, it does not look natural. Like, it's way too perfect. And
straight lines.
Yeah, there's like videos of divers going down and showing like that there's like blocks underneath these blocks holding them level to make them level with each other.
Yeah, like there was supports and
so that doesn't seem natural to me. And so there's a pretty compelling argument that area was an ancient civilization that sank too, which could have been what led to the story of Atlantis. And
now that I'm thinking about it in Rashad, I should have wrote it down, but there's signs of like what we said, how Plato described like a cataclysmic event that set it off. There's like lava flows that meet with water, and where there's rock formed, and they're like perfect straight lines, like something.
Oh, so like like dried lava.
Yes,
so
exactly.
Like where, so there's evidence of a volcano erupting and then meeting water.
Yeah, and it's
okay.
and it kind of, I guess that also points to the fact that there was a cataclysmic event in whatever area. There's different interpretations of how old Atlantis is, but maybe there was a cataclysmic
Right.
event in Northwest Africa, 11, 12,000
Yeah.
years ago, maybe a lot sooner than we thought. Who
Well,
knows?
well, also to add to the story of Atlantis is that the city of Atlantis was only like the main city. They supposedly had
10 kingdoms.
yeah, like 10 kingdoms.
Uh-huh.
So if you want to dig even deeper, it could like multiple sites could all be part of it.
And I guess that's kind of where it points back to where I guess that did Plato said they went down a downward spiral? Who said that they were conquering and the Atlanteans went down, like their ethics?
Oh,
and-
okay, yeah, like they
Yeah.
went into moral decline.
Yeah, they went into moral decline. Like maybe that's them expanding and conquering, and maybe people getting too greedy.
Yeah.
There's many ways to say it, but it is described that Atlantis is just the main capital.
You know what's interesting is that last guy, Edgar Case, that I talked about, is in his readings, he describes how they declined. Possibly, this is he
Yes.
wasn't making this all up, and it's just interesting that in his talks about it, he talks about them like using basically kind of like cloning technology and
Some
like
Star Wars shit.
like making like chimeras, like mixes between people and animals, and then using them as like slave labor. So
Dude, that's insane.
it's crazy stuff, but like so he talks about that, which is interesting. Nowadays we have like CRISPR, where we're starting to be able to mess with the genetics of people and stuff.
Yeah.
And then also there's talks about that they're talking about bringing back Neanderthals because they have the technology to do so.
And woolly mammoths.
Well, they're doing woolly
Yeah.
mammoths, but they're having the debate to bring back Neanderthals. So
Dude, if they bring back Neanderthals, I am just I'm
yes,
cheesed.
so it's like, do you get to the point where you genetically make a lesser version of a human that can be like your slave class and do all the work for you? Because like that's what Edgar Case was saying the Atlanteans did, and was like a huge chunk
Yeah.
of their moral decline.
Let me ask you this question.
Just interesting idea.
Now on some weird, real quick. Just a little end cap off the podcast, a little weird stuff.
Okay, what do you got?
Would you rather have slave labor of Neanderthals or robots?
Ooh.
Like top tier, like
I
artificial
feel like
intelligence robots.
ethically, you gotta say robots,
But post-apocalyptic,
but they're both scary ideas.
dude. We've seen the Planet of the Apes. Imagine the Neanderthal.
Did you see the video? There's a video up. I don't remember where I saw it, or I would give the link, but it's of this robot that was built to just perform basically slave labor,
Okay.
and it had its own learning technology. And when it realized,
What
I
it
want to
was
say it was
doing?
like within 10 minutes, when it realized that it just had to do the same thing over and over again, it self-terminated itself. It just killed itself.
Dude, I see. I guess we're getting. I've heard examples of computers getting too smart and they go to turn it. Sorry, that's a rookie move. They go to turn it off, and the computer just refuses to turn itself off. So they got to pull the plug.
Yeah, I
Like-
mean, this is a whole nother rabbit hole we can get down. But
Yeah,
I would say overall, the idea of it ethically being wrong is true,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Dude, Atlantis is weird, man. I guess at the end of the day, I want to get a little personal thoughts again. After we've talked here for
Yeah? What do
about
you got?
45 minutes, I want to get it from you.
Oh, me?
Yeah, what do you
On the
think?
overall,
Red, what is Red's mind thinking? What is his opinion?
I don't know if the literal city of Atlantis was real. If anything, I feel like there is something, though, that the story is based off of that is real.
Yes.
So I feel like there probably was another more ancient society of humans that was advanced, but I don't know that they were advanced to that they were like beyond us and making clones and stuff. Maybe they were just advanced in their understanding of
They were getting there.
of how they govern themselves and, you know, their structures, like
Ethics.
I don't know if they built pyramids or something, but like there's ancient, like older pyramids in parts of the world that they don't know where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they were just an older than the Egyptians and Sumerians, and you know, something radical did wipe them out. Maybe it ties into the idea of the Younger Dryas theory, and there was a meteor impact that wiped them out. And maybe the Atlantis story is just the remnants of that, of what was left from what was the Younger Dryas, like 13,000 years ago? So this is a long time ago, and it would take humans a long time to recoup from that.
But also in the grand scheme of things, that's really not that
Yeah.
long ago either.
Right. So I would say that's my best kind of guess theory idea. You know, I'm not set in stone on any of this, but I think that's my best answer.
I guess now I got to get into it. I think I got to be the outlier.
Yeah, what do you think?
I'm not for sure into it. I 100% agree with that there was something, either that this is real or it was based off an ancient civilization that was advanced, like how you were saying. Maybe not super advanced, but they were looking pretty good.
Right.
But like I kind of believe it.
Yeah.
Plato's idea of Atlantis, like
Right.
I want to believe it. I want to believe it, I guess is the better way to say. Like,
Yeah. Maybe they had some different technology. Like their advanced technology looked different than ours.
yeah.
Like instead of using like copper wires and fiber optics and making internet and stuff, maybe they used sound, and that's how they like floated rocks and made the pyramid. I don't know.
Dude,
You know?
that would be sick. But
Or like they healed people with sound. Like cancer wasn't a problem. 'Cause
yeah,
They just hit the
the
frequencies.
sound
and
wave,
it
was
you know?
OP. Yeah, I
don't know.
I want to believe in it though. It just,
I wanted to. It's cool.
to me,
I think that's why it survived.
I think
everyone kind of wants to believe in it.
I
It's
just,
cool,
in
right?
my mind, I see the connections between the Egyptians and the Atlanteans. Like, in my little pea head brain, it just makes so much sense to me.
Yeah,
But
I feel like the idea of the story just fills in gaps.
Yeah.
Of what we know has happened, right?
yeah, but
Yeah. Who knows?
at the end of the day, who knows exactly?
Hopefully,
Took the
like
words right from me.
like we said in the beginning, hopefully one day they find that that inscribing, that bas relief or that pillar in Egypt that has the story, and then we can have some real solid evidence for it. And
To end
know.
this off, though, if they find it, we ain't seeing it.
You
We are
think?
not seeing it. There's no way, dude.
Oh man,
That is way too good of information.
I don't know, man. It's
You
cool.
think they let it go?
I don't know. Like, you think if they ever find an emerald tablet, we're gonna see it? I don't know.
Hell no.
Really?
Especially if it's real, because you already know before they let us know, they're gonna test it.
I think if anyone finds it, they gotta bust it on the internet first. But then even then, people will think the video's fake.
Yeah.
So that's kind of hard.
All right.
I don't know. Anyways,
God.
guys, it's up to everyone, to decide for themselves. We, I know we gave some of our opinions, but we just tried to give you all the facts and different nuanced ideas about it. So,
This has been Jake.
and this has been Red. Thanks for listening.
Have a good one.